This is Zhao Pierre Ruth for Information Week, and today we are speaking with Babak Hodjat, CTO of AI at Cognizant, taking a look at a bit of his career, his expertise, and some of his understandings and perspectives on how things are evolving in the AI space. I've got an extensive background that should be part of something that folks will have some familiarity with. If I understand that you're part that Siri has some connection to you, which I'm sure everyone is like very familiar with. So, Babak, so glad to be speaking with you. Thank you so much for making yourself available.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Okay, great. So before we get started with some questions, can we talk a little bit about your background before we get into the kind of work that you're seeing now? Let's talk about some of the kind of the earlier elements of your career, if you will.
Sure. I got my master's degree in software engineering, and actually even before my bachelor's, I got into AI, and I've stayed with it my entire career. I've pretty much every single job I've had has been in an AI since the late 80s, and I have a PhD in AI from Kyushu University in Japan. And my first startup was in AI by the name of Dejima, and that the technology that I invented in that startup ended up being the natural language technology behind Siri. And currently I am the CTO AI for Cognizant, so overseeing our AI strategy and R&D here at this very large services company.
Appreciate that. I'm sure a lot of people appreciate you for what you've done with being essentially, the backbone.
Not always. Not always. Siri sometimes doesn't quite cooperate.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's talk a bit about what you see as, the biggest challenge for you, but also like what are some of the biggest challenges for CTOs, particularly looking at the AI space and we've gone through some celebratory moments, but now I guess we're in more of a, trying to see how this, further evolves, how it matures, how it scales up, what are you seeing, not only for yourself, but also kind of a bit more broadly, if you will, for how things are evolving? Like, what are some of the challenges there?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest kind of constant challenge with AI that you have to grapple with, especially in applied AI, bringing it to businesses and enterprises and consumers, is the problem of expectation. People expect AI systems to be the be-all, end-all, and always be correct and be able to, tell the future and be smarter than all of humanity, all at the same time. So when that fails, it's an issue. And so AI typically doesn't get compared to the baseline, which is human intelligence. Even there, I think if you're even as smart as a fraction of how smart we are as a human, we could make that work and useful. But it's also compared to the ideal. So there is that expectation. More recently, the expectation from AI is also that it be consistent and not just always correct, but also consistent. And at least the track we are on right now with the state of the art in AI, with large language models and generative AI, these systems are not consistent. You ask it the same question twice, it will give you two different answers. The gist of the answer might be the same, but the manner in which it presents it will definitely be different. And so if you're thinking of AI as these knowledge workers in a box that will augment and improve your business, but you don't have a handle on them and they're opaque, you can't quite explain why they're doing various different things, and on top of that, they're kind of inconsistent in their responses, then it's very difficult to quality assure them and trust them. And so that's one of the issues that we run into. What exasperates this is the fact that, software is typically expected to be consistent. You write code and you expect that code to do exactly what you tell it to do. And, when we think of AI as a module and a software, we have to kind of change that attitude, that expectation there. So that's one of the things that I grappled with a lot, and more so recently in bringing AI to businesses.
And naturally, you have a good background in this, of course. But from what you see in terms of the role of the CTO in this AI world, how what kind of challenges do you see coming into the nature of being a CTO? Because we have some organizations that will have might have a separate chief AI officer. I mean, in terms of maybe even feedback or conversations you have with peers, what's the sense of where the CTO fits in what was what had been the traditional, if you will, C-suite tech leadership kind of dynamic?
Well, the CTO always has like a forward-looking aspect to their job description.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to be able to anticipate what's coming, how it might be or not be applied or useful. That also means that you also need to have like a research aspect to what you're doing. You need to be up to date on all the latest papers that are coming out and success from various different research organizations and applying various different technologies, startups that might be working in a certain field. And so that is the distinction. If you're a chief AI officer right now, or a chief data officer, chief AI officer, you're really looking at the here and now of your business and how you bring AI in. As a CTO, you're kind of one step or half a step ahead of that. And so one of the challenges there is, being able to muster the investment and the importance in innovation and bring that in. I think that's really, really critical. Pretty much in every single one of my jobs in the past, I've really emphasized on the value of research and how you actually invest in a business, invest in research in that area where you want to stay a step ahead. Because I always say the best way to predict the future is to actually create the future. Mm-hmm. And research is a way of doing that. It's, you point the researcher at a general area, and as they innovate, you kind of bring that innovation in. And if that innovation is useful, you ended up creating that future. I think that's also a challenge, because with the way our businesses are set up right now, we're very typically short-term focused, and the investments are primarily going towards things that are making revenue immediately. And research, does not go well with the timeline. So, that is a challenge, and, you have to expect the research to kind of pay back over time, and you have to measure it differently. But one of the measures would be, for example, the IP, the patents that you are able to get on that research. It's an indication that this research was interesting enough that it might actually be used in the future.
Talking about innovation, amongst other things, what do you see as going well in terms of innovation and projects that you're overseeing, but then also more broadly for the overall pace of development, or not just the pace of development, but the type of overall development that is happening in the AI space?
Yeah, there's a very interesting dichotomy happening in AI. AI has always been this pursuit of that ideal, intelligent, be-all, end-all system. Mm-hmm. And usually it's been thought of as this one monolithic system. When you look at large language models, generative AI, it's one model. And that model can take different personas. You can ask it math questions. You can have it tell you some poetry or translate some language or write you some code. It's the same model doing all of the above. On the other hand, when we want to apply AI, we do want to put it in a box. We do want to give it a job description. We have to. Here's what you can do. Here are a set of tools that we can give you. And this is all you do. Don't worry about everything else. Just do this part well. So now we have a mix of tools, code, and a Gen AI model that has been given a job description, and we call that an agent. The moment we transition into that, we're in the field of engineering. This thing has to be tailored. It has to be customized. You have to think about, where you're applying it and where you're not, and how you're going to make it observable, and all those good things. And that kind of goes a little bit against that goal of AI, which was, create something that's just smart out of the box and can do everything. So there is that trend that I'm seeing. There's a little bit of a conflict there, and I am squarely in that camp that says this is an engineering discipline if it wants to be applied. So we do take these generally intelligent systems and put them in the box with the job description and give them some tools and set them up as an organization of agents that work together. And that's the only way we can actually exert some control. We then now have some control over that delineation of where we defer to this intelligent system to, autonomously make some decisions or use its reasoning or use its world model, and where we're like, no, here is something that for our business, we have to be very specific. It has to be, repeatable and consistent, and it's all written in code. So yeah, I think that's the world we're going to move in. And you mentioned it, JP, that we're kind of now looking at how we apply these breakthroughs. And I think the way we apply these breakthroughs is to bring in some of that organizational engineering discipline.
Gotcha. Flip side of that, what keeps you up at night? Whether it's, it could be, a Black Mirror inspired terrors of what, or at least people say that AI may or may not do, or maybe it could even be the expectations that might be kind of that are being spun around out there about AI, but a bunch of people asking like, we want AI to do this, and it's like, wait, whoa, well, actually, you tell me what are some of those things that that might, kind of keep you, be stuck in your thoughts, trying to say like, all right, so we're trying to do, and this is what we're facing with how we're trying to evolve in this space.
Jean-Pierre, I wish it was just one thing. Definitely the expectation thing we talked about, that is definitely something that is super important, because you give the demo, you show the system, and it's compelling and it's powerful. But then it creates this expectation, and you really don't want to backtrack from that. So there is definitely that. But there are other things as well. I think it's important to note that AI has gone through springs and winters. Currently it's in the forefront. There have been a number of very interesting breakthroughs. There are other breakthroughs needed on this journey to create AI systems. And they do need more investment and maybe more patience. And if we're not patient enough with that, then we might hit another winter with AI. So that's something that is important to remember. These days, also, just to get into like the sort of the operational aspect of this, just hiring good AI folks is challenging. AI is progressing at a very, very rapid pace, and folks that know it enough and are able to then push the envelope on it are somewhat scarce and very much in demand. And unfortunately, these days, it's even harder to attract talent here in the US too. So, we have to look a little bit more internationally. But, just attracting that talent and bringing it in has proven to be somewhat challenging.
So kind of like piggybacks off of that. Can you talk about a bit about some of your biggest joys, and also, the flip side, joys and gripes of, kind of like your role, but also, working in this AI sector?
Oh, so one of the things that attracts me to AI is these moments of unexpected joy that you get from the AI doing something that you didn't expect. And definitely you get that a lot more these days with the power of these large language models. So I'm usually very hands-on. I try to stay in coding and using these AI systems all the time. And when it's hard to be overambitious these days with, you kind of give yourself a challenge and a task, and you go in and you're just pleasantly surprised that it exceeds your expectation. I love those moments of unexpected joy.
Do you have a favorite tool or gadget that comes into play, maybe on a daily or just on kind of a frequent basis? So like, hey, this, either helps you do something or maybe just kind of gets you through times when you're trying to, make things
Yeah,
work.
I mean, obviously, surprising uses of these generative AI systems in not just in work but also in personal life. You tend to have these go-tos, these apps or websites that you typically go to for something, and sometimes you're like, let me try, I don't know, Claude or ChatGPT or one of these tools to see whether it can do it, and it does, and then it kind of changes your behavior going forward. So definitely, using AI in personal life as well as work life is important. But I'll be a little sort of, maybe it'll surprise you, but these days, a hard copy book is my favorite gadget
Mm-hmm.
to go to. It's somehow, it kind of like with all that happens and the amount of context switch that you have to do and all that, just being able to go to your bedroom and not have your phone or laptop around you, and just this old but very useful and interesting technology that takes you into a different world, and with a brain that stops functioning in power speed, and it just kind of like settles on a story or a narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I found it very, very interesting. And when I do that, good and interesting new ideas come to your brain. It's somehow like your brain gets this moment to kind of sit back and observe and think, and somehow ideas surface, versus when you're like context switching at 1,000 miles an hour.
Gotcha. Do you have a short list of favorite books?
Currently, I'm reading a book by Daniel Dennett that came out in the 90s, and it's about the surprising power of evolution. He's a philosopher. He looked at it from a philosophy perspective. It's interesting as you read it to notice that a lot of the concepts and ideas that today we take for granted were around back then, and in some cases things that haven't been around back then, and how the author kind of treats them and talks about them is interesting. So currently that's what I'm reading. I'm based here in Santa Cruz. I read a whole bunch of novels by John Steinbeck because he was kind of local here, and I really enjoyed those too. So those are the ones right now that I would suggest.
Gotcha. Who's been kind of like the biggest influence on your career? Instructors, a mentor. Who, if you were to kind of look back and say, okay, I mean, it might just not be one, it might be a few folks. Where did you really kind of like feel like, hey, these were crucial to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, there have been many, and I don't want to name too many names. The one that just popped in my mind as you asked the question right now is a retired professor by the name of Dave Ackley, and he works in artificial life, and he has not compromised the ideal of sort of robust first computing. And he talks about it, and I had the honor to meet him a few times at conferences, and I really like what he talks about, which is, computing is this very rigid, von Neumann-based architecture, and we've given up robustness in favor of being very consistent. And his whole thing is, look, we can actually, by giving up some consistency, we can actually build hugely resilient and robust distributed systems. And for each node in that system, it doesn't have to be very smart. Just a little smart is enough for the totality, like the emergent behavior of this system, to just be amazingly powerful. Love what he's done. He's actually also very hands-on. He writes his own code and does his own experiments, and he's been quite an influence in the way, I think.
Do you have any advice that you would share with somebody who's maybe, rather early in their career in IT, whether they're specifically looking to become a CTO or maybe even at some point, chief AI officer, what kinds of things might you have shared perchance with your younger self or just, your younger peers from way back when? I'm like, if we only knew then, that you might share.
Yeah, I mean, I guess don't compromise on your interests and ideals, and also remain hands-on. I see a lot of technical folks that kind of gave up on writing code or gave up on being hands-on, and I think that is, of course, people get very, very busy, and the utility of their experience is elsewhere. But I do think that being hands-on is really important, keeping up to date, and not losing touch with that fascination and joy that got them into the field in the first place. I think that's probably the advice I would give my own younger self.
Gotcha. I'm just gonna throw this one here. Are there any lessons that you recall or have kind of like developed or absorbed, reflecting on, your earlier work, how that became, the groundwork for Siri, that you're kind of looking back and say, oh, wow, this, that you've come to personal realization on? And are there things that you're working on now or that you would like to see, just kind of like going forward in that AI space, just you can just kind of share your kind of perspectives on those.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it might be surprising for you in the audience to know that the original Siri natural language system was multi-agentic.
Mm-hmm.
And rather different types of agents, but these agents were coordinating with one another, finding out which agent or a team of agents coming together to actually fulfill some inquiry that you had. And sometimes you could actually give it very complex inquiries. My really good friend Adam Chire used to call these multi-agentic systems active ontologies, which is basically, representation of the semantics of the domain of discourse represented by these agents that are active. They would actually talk to each other to sort out what needs to be done. And while it was much, much tougher to program these agents back then, there was a lot of coding and rules and so forth. But that was the key in moving from a rigid grammar-based approach to natural language, which was language specific, to an approach that was robust enough that you could be ungrammatical, you could give it complex queries and commands, and it could handle those. What made the difference was that multi-agency. And actually recently, in the past couple of years, I suddenly realized that coordination mechanism is useful in today's agents. While today's agents are different and they have this very powerful large language model, so it's much easier to code these agents, the coordination mechanism could still benefit from some of our findings back then, which is, rather than being programmed and rigid that this agent needs to talk to this agent first and then to this agent and this agent to get something done, why don't we actually have these agents consult with each other and guarantee the encapsulation of the responsibilities? But this agent knows three agents, just like humans. They're like, I got this inquiry. Can you do anything about it? And each one of the down chains would in turn ask their down chains and come back and say, this part of the query is something that I think I can handle. And some other agent would say, this part is something I can handle. And then as these agents are returning their claims to the input, it can be consolidated or pruned even. Between you two guys, I think you're more appropriate to handle it. It makes for a very robust system, and I think we need that today. People are going out and bringing in third-party agents or creating their proprietary agents. The next thing you know, you have a large set of agents, and you want them to work together. So surprisingly, some of that work that we did, I did, or Adam, my friend Adam Chire did back in the 90s, are very relevant today in these multi-agentic systems and how we can make them applied and robust.
Gotcha. And rather than ask you about a dream job other than the job that you're in now, I'm actually curious, course, the work with Siri, the groundwork for Siri that we just discussed. Is there another type of dream project or dream innovation that you would like to, I would really love to see this, come together at
Oh
my
yeah,
at some point in the future?
absolutely. One of the first papers I ever published was on artificial life, but an applied version of artificial life, where you have these idiot savant agents basically surviving their environment, but that environment is actually a reflection of a problem you want to solve. And they might cooperate, they might compete, some might die, new ones would come around, but it's like surviving an ecosystem that is the problem that you're trying to solve, and the emergent behavior is the solution to that problem. I wrote that paper, I think it was published in 1994. Just last year, I published another paper sort of as a follow-up to that work, where I showed that that's how you would build these systems and how it does very well on some benchmarks and so forth. It's one of those things at the back of my mind that I'm like, I'll go back to that. It's powerful and it's interesting. It's robust, resilient, and it might be the key to some of the features that we're missing in our AI systems today. But that's definitely one of the interesting tracks to go back to in my mind, if there's time.
Well, definitely curious and would love to see something like that, come to fruition. So, Babak, you've been fantastic. I appreciate you making yourself available and sharing insight on your career, your background, and the bright ideas that you've been conjuring. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.